The Texas GOP this week, they basically released their draft platform for the coming year. And when you're talking about a state party and the state Republican Party in Texas, and you say, what's on your wish list of things you'd like to do? It is some crazy, crazy stuff. So they released this last weekend. They finalized it sometime earlier this week. And of course, a lot of the items on here, we know it's never going to happen. But this is their official wish list of what they say. You vote for us, this is what we want to get done for you. And of course, it's all horrifying stuff because the items on there are concerning, they are disturbing. They go so far beyond just references to the Christian God. And I wanted to show you some of the lowlights because the one thing that is in this document that got a lot of media attention is that they said instead of deciding state level offices like governor by a popular vote, why don't we say whoever wins has to win the majority of counties in Texas? Which is a very interesting thing to say when a lot of black people in Texas live in a couple counties that are really big, and a whole lot of white rural Texans. Like, you might have a Texas county with hundreds of thousands of people, if not a million people. And then you have a whole bunch more Texas counties with like 1,000 people in it. And so these Republicans are like, you know who should have a lot of power? Those rural counties with 1,000 people, because they could totally nullify the million votes in Houston or something like that. And if they ever did that, it would basically shut Democrats out of every statewide race. So that was the biggest headline I saw about what this platform suggested. But the religious elements to it are even worse. And I'm going to show you some of them. Here's one example, because I went through this entire document, and you could see number 18 right here. It has to do with prayer, Bible, and 10 Commandments in schools. What does it say? We support affirmation of God, including prayer, the Bible, and the 10 Commandments being returned to our schools, courthouses, and other government buildings. Like, what the hell? This is one way for Texas Republicans to basically say, hey, Jews, Muslims, atheists, every other non-Christian, we don't have any place for you in the state of Texas. Everything is bigger here, including the bigotry. It's also weird for them to say, like, we want to shove the Bible into courthouses because our entire system of justice, in theory, is dependent on the facts and the rule of law and not archaic religious rules. And then they're basically admitting out loud here, we want to get the prayer and Bible and the 10 Commandments back into public schools. Why? What benefit does that offer anybody? It doesn't. We've had this discussion before. The only reason these Christians want to see their God affirmed in public places is you would have to think their faith is incredibly weak. As if, like, if they don't see constant reinforcement of their religion, it would hurt their feelings or something. So that's disturbing. And that's just one item on this list. Let's go to a different one. This is item number 88. Let's see. Religious freedom in government schools. We demand school administrators and officials protect the rights of students and staff to pray and engage in religious speech, if individually or in groups, or school property without government interference. Stop there. Guess what? That's already the law. No one's arguing that. Okay. We urge the legislature and the State Board of Education to require instruction on the Bible. What the hell does that mean? What does instruction on the Bible mean that's so vague and ominous? And they also want to require servant leadership and Christian self-governance. Like, those buzzwords are scary because I don't know what they actually want people to do with that, but yikes. We support the use of chaplains in schools to counsel and give guidance from a traditional biblical perspective based on Judeo-Christian principles with the informed consent of a parent. This refers to the chaplain law that was passed in Texas that basically allowed public school districts to replace trained social workers with untrained Christian chaplains. And you could tell, you could see in that document right here that they kind of get fuzzy with the language. They say, well, it's only We only want students to see those Christian chaplains if the parents say it's okay. But what happens if you're a gay or trans student who could really benefit from speaking to a mental health professional at your school because of all the BS you're dealing with? Like, if your parents say, like, what, you're gay? Nope, don't go see a professional. Go see a chaplain instead. That would have parental consent, but it wouldn't be good for the kid. And if the kid doesn't want to come out to their parents, they wouldn't get to see someone they actually need to see. Like, that's really disturbing. And by the way, we've talked about this too. After Texas passed that chaplain law, a bunch of chaplains wrote letters to the state lawmaker saying, don't do it. Don't put us in schools. It's a horrible idea. But no one listened. And the Republican who kind of spearheaded this bill, he even admitted in an interview that chaplains represent God in government. This is their way of shoving Christianity into public schools. And again, I want to go back to they want instruction on the Bible. What does that mean? I'd have no idea. It's very disturbing. I think if there's any silver lining to this, it's that shoving the Bible into public schools may be the fastest way to drive kids away from Christianity, because nothing will make kids ditch their faith faster than actually reading that book. But also, they shouldn't have to deal with this. So it's disturbing. Here's another element of this platform. This is number 89, instructional excellence. Instructional excellence. And let's just jump to what they say about science for letter D right here. What do they want in science? We support objective teaching of scientific methods, practices, and theories, including the complexity of life origins and the changing climate throughout geologic history. Just stop there for a second. We support objective teaching of all that stuff. We support evolution. We support climate change. Okay. These shall be taught, they say, as challengeable scientific theory, subject to change as new data is produced. Like, it already is. It's already challengeable. That's how science works. Go publish your paper and tell us why Darwin was wrong. That is how science works. What are you talking about? And then it says teachers and students shall discuss the strengths and weaknesses of these theories openly without fear of retribution or discrimination. And if you are familiar with that phrase, strengths and weaknesses, you know that is the term that like replaced intelligent design. It's just weasel words that say, you know what we should teach kids about climate change? That there's reason to doubt it. You know what we should teach kids about evolution? That there are alternative theories and that evolution has holes because we haven't fully verified it, even though we scientifically absolutely have. Like, all the evidence we've ever seen confirms evolution and confirms climate change that's man-made. And they're acting like, nope, there are holes in it, kids. So, maybe don't believe in this stuff. Like, Texas is trying to make kids dumber. It is scary. Here's another one that comes straight out of David Barton's hell. Founding documents in high school. We support a high school level curriculum for the study of American history that is heavily weighted toward the study of original founding documents, including the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, the Constitutional Convention, the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, Jefferson's letter to the Danbury Baptists, and other founders' writings. First of all, almost all of that, if not all of that, was written before slavery was illegal and before women could vote. So I guess that's the history they want to go back to. It's also weird that Jefferson's letter to the Danbury Baptists is included in there, because I know a lot of you atheists know this. That's the letter Jefferson wrote where he first brought up publicly this idea that there ought to be church-state separation. So that seems odd. Why would Republicans want kids to know about that, of all things? And I can help you out there. The reason is when David Barton, the Christian pseudo-historian, talks about that letter, he twists its meaning, because in his view, Jefferson was saying a wall needed to be built, but it would only operate in one direction. The state cannot interfere with the church. But David Barton goes on to say the church can totally interfere with the state. So that's why they want these kids to read that letter, I guess. I don't know how they want that letter taught to students, but I don't trust whatever they have going. And also the reason they want to go back to the founding documents, it is important to read the founding documents, but you need to understand what it means. And the way you're going to get that information is through a good history textbook or a good historian who knows how to filter that material and make it accessible to modern people. And they don't want that. They just say, no, just read the original Greek. Just read the original documents. You'll understand it. Let us filter it for you. So that's weird. Here's another thing that is in this document. This is interesting. Freedom of speech and religious practice. And I know it's small, but the font they gave is small. But look at letter A. We demand the repeal of the Johnson Amendment, which assaults the free speech of pastors and religious organizations. That's disturbing. They want a repeal of the Johnson Amendment. The Johnson Amendment is the thing that says if you're a nonprofit group, including a church, but also including like Planned Parenthood, you cannot tell your members how to vote. You can say on this issue, this president does a good job or doesn't do a good job. And you could put out a scorecard if you want, but you can't tell people how to vote. And this is saying, nope, we're going to overturn the law somehow, even though it's just the state of Texas. We're going to overturn the law that says we can't preach about this so that we could preach about this. And what's even worse about that idea is this idea that they're actually persecuted, that they don't have free speech because of the Johnson Amendment. Because, one, the IRS doesn't go after people who violate the Johnson Amendment. It's frustrating, but it's true. And also, they've been egging on the IRS for years. They've been telling their congregations how to vote. You know what happens? Nothing. None of them have lost their tax-exempt status. And I also think it's a bad idea, though, because if the Johnson Amendment was repealed, you know what would happen? A lot of conservative Christian megachurches would just become arms of the Republican Party. The Republican Party would go to every big church in their community, tell people you need to vote for me or else hellfire. And their pastors would come on stage and say, yeah, what that guy said. And I don't know why you'd want to go to church at that point because it's just a meeting of young Republicans or something. It's just a bad idea for them. There's another thing they say in this section. Look at letter D. Right over here. Sorry, I can't highlight it well, but I'm going to zoom in here. Nor shall services or other church functions, right above my head, right over here. Nor shall services or other church functions ever again be shut down or suspended by overreaching civil authorities under any pretext whatsoever. What's that all about? Well, during COVID, you may remember that people weren't allowed to gather in large groups. There were laws, there were ordinances, local ones passed that said you can't get together in close proximity with strangers. I don't remember if we knew about masks at the time, but they basically said you can't gather in large groups. You got to socially distance, wear a mask if you can. Don't chat, don't mingle, things like that, which is why a grocery store was safe to go to because you're in, you're out, you don't talk to people, and why churches and YMCA meetings or something were not allowed. And churches flipped their shit over that. And so what this Texas platform is saying is, no, you can never shut us down for any reason in the future, ever. It's what if there's a deadly disease that's airborne and spreading? And what this platform says is, too bad for the rest of you. Our church gets to do whatever we want, even if that means spreading a viral disease and killing people in the process. That's what Texas Republicans want. So that's disturbing. I guess the silver lining to all this is that, like I said earlier, this is a theoretical agenda. It's symbolic. But this is what the party stands for in Texas. This is where the Republican Party of Texas wants to go. And I think it's telling that Texas already has a supermajority of Republicans in their legislature. If they wanted to get this stuff done, they could do it. The only reason it hasn't gotten done in certain cases is because the Republicans decided, for whatever reason, this is not the hill we want to die on, or this is a horrible, horrible idea because we will get sued and we will lose. And here's the Republican Party just saying, don't care. You better sign off on it or we're going to primary you in the future, basically. Like, do you know how bad things have to be for the Texas Republicans to say, maybe this goes too far? But again, the audience for a document like this, it's not an average Texan. It's the sort of nutballs who belong to the Texas GOP and run as their candidates. Like, the only thing that's good about them releasing this is that hopefully it serves as a warning to other Texans who don't agree with it, because there's so much for them to choose from. And hopefully they won't vote for a Texas Republican come next fall. It is funny to me that the people who claim to be the biggest patriots in the country are also the people who want to just torch the Constitution and replace it with their preferred holy book. And again, if you think this document goes too far, you know what you should be doing? Voting for Biden this November and voting for Democrats up and down the ballot. I don't care if you don't love them. They're better than the alternative, so do the right thing. And I know, like, it won't make a difference at the national level if there's a Democratic president and a Senate that's a certain way. But if you have a Senate there in the Democrats' favor, they could install better Supreme Court justices who would have authority over what the Texas legislature is doing. And so people should think about that, because this wish list of what Texas Republicans want to accomplish if they get enough power, which they already have, is so disturbing. I'm going to pause there for a bit while I get the next story up here. What is that? Texas sets the bar for nationwide textbook adoption. Yeah, historically, that's true. And what Lucy is saying is that when Texas tells a publisher we want to purchase a certain textbook and the textbook company rewrites their textbook so that Texas will buy it, a lot of other states end up buying those textbooks too. So what Texas wants has an influence on other states. That is true. So glad I just went through training with Amplify, who did not sign on for this nonsense, at least. You know what's interesting, Lucy? I didn't talk about Amplify yet. I am going to talk about them in the next story. So hold that thought for a second and we'll come back to it. Kind of funny how the religious section is pretty vague compared to the gun section. There is a very specific and very large gun section to that Republican platform that is very disturbing. Yes. Phonics-based reading instruction is used in a lot of conservative platforms because it limits exposure to other ideas or critical thinking skills. I'm seeing that below the section, below section 88. Yeah, I don't doubt it 1 second. What they don't want to do is have kids think critically, so they want to give them exactly what to read, and the more vague and boring, like the Federalist Papers, the better. And again, I'm not saying you shouldn't read something like the Federalist Papers, but you got to do it with the right context. And it helps to have some filter that says, yeah, that's what it says, but here's what it means. And I'm a historian and you can trust me because I actually know the full context here. So I'm not lying to you. And they are not interested in any of that at all. Translation: free speech for Christians, not for anyone else. You are correct. We just need to tax the churches. They've been blatantly breaking the law. You know, I've talked about this before. If you want to tax nonprofit groups, that would include churches, I get the sentiment. I don't want nonprofits to be taxed. I think it's a good thing that nonprofits, and that includes churches, are not taxed because they're providing a service that for-profit companies are not going to provide. I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good incentive not to tax them. My problem is that if churches specifically are breaking the rules that they agreed to, then you should be able to take away their tax exempt status and like make them pay their taxes. Like, that's also free speech. You can promote whoever you want, then just pay your taxes. But they don't want that. They want to have their cake and eat it too. That's why this is so troubling.